This week we have a 1979 Pontiac Trans Am 10th anniversary car with just over 100 miles on it. You may have seen it in a movie, now it's part of the Brothers collection. This week's feature car from the Brothers collection is a 1979 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am 10th anniversary edition. And this car is famous for two different reasons. First of all, for being in the movie Joe Dirt, in which it was driven by the rock star Kid Rock. But Pontiac fans know this car more for the fact that it has only, right around 110 miles on it now, and it was stored for many, many years with about 60 miles on it. So it's about the newest 79 Firebird Trans Am 10th anniversary car you'll ever see. By 1979, Pontiac's second generation Firebird body style was really coming toward the end of its line. The style changed again for 1982, so there was only a few years left by 1979. And what I think is interesting is how different the cars look at the late 70s as opposed to the early 70s. The earlier cars are much more tighter and aggressive looking, but as they evolved over the years and reached the late 70s, they were very, very flashy and some people think were very overdone. A lot of that is the popularity of just the style in general of the late 70s. This is the height of the disco era, so the cars were, people call them disco, it's that simple. But this 79 10th anniversary edition had everything Pontiac could throw at it. When you look at the car, these were silver edition. In fact, if you look at the build sheet, that's what they called them. They didn't call them the anniversary, they were called the silver edition. And it had a two-tone silver and gray paint job on it, but it had a special 5-color hood bird, and then it had a black and red stripe package that went all over the car as well. So when you looked at it, you knew there was something special going on just because there was so much going on. This was the first time we saw the turbo-style wheels. These were used on the next couple of years of cars also, but they debuted on the 79. Interior had all kinds of flashy accessories as well. In fact, the seats were silver, for crying out loud. Silver leather. Power windows, power steering, power brakes, it's got power door locks, digital stereo 8-track unit with a functioning digital display. I mean, most of these things wore out a million years ago. And there were 10th anniversary badges and Firebird emblems on the door panels, on the back seat. Everywhere they could put some badging on this car, they did. Of course, it's got the Trans Am engine turned dash, full complement of gauges. The gauges lit up red, which was different from the other cars. Thick silver shag carpeting. This thing even had mirrored T-tops on the outside instead of the traditional smoked gray ones. So I mean, there was all kinds of visual details to separate this from the standard 79 Trans Am. If ever there was a time capsule for a second generation F-body, this is it. And from a performance standpoint, the 79 Trans Am was not necessarily the fastest, but still not terrible. You could either get these with an Oldsmobile 403 V8 and an automatic, or as this car has, the Pontiac 400 V8 with a 4-speed manual transmission. The 400 was rated at 220 horsepower at 4,000 RPM. Again, not a real rocket ship. 320 foot-pounds of torque at 2,800 RPM. But as far as what you could get in 1979 by comparison, this was definitely a front runner. It was only an 8.1 to 1 compression ratio engine with the Pontiac 6X cylinder heads. So this is what a, right around 100-mile 1979 Pontiac 400 looks like. It's interesting to see how these things evolved over the years. This is almost unrecognizable as a Pontiac 400, except for the chrome valve covers and the color of the block, because these things just picked up more and more smog equipment and accessories and stuff, wiring and hoses and vacuum lines and all kinds of garbage. So a lot of people ripped that stuff off, and you could put earlier Pontiac cylinder heads on it to raise the compression ratio and make a bunch more power. Other things I think are kind of interesting, there's some efforts here from GM to save money. The fender supports, in order to fit the same one left and right, it's flipped so that it angles differently on one side than the other. So we started to see some cost cutting, because by 79, the design process for the 82 Trans Am, I'm sure, was well underway. So they were just trying to get these down the road. The rear gear with the 4-speed was a 323. The Oldsmobile 403 powered automatic cars had a 273. The Pontiac 400 versions were a little bit snappier off the line. Every one of these cars had the WS6 suspension package, which was disc brakes, bigger sway bars, a good spring package, good shock absorber. So they did handle very nicely, and it's interesting to see that this car has the original tires that it came with new in 1979. But they were very popular in their time. Pontiac made over 116,000 of these 79 Trans Ams new. Only 7,500 were 10th anniversary edition cars, and out of those, 1,817 were Pontiac 400 V8 4-speed combination cars. So those are the most desirable ones. So this car now lives in the brothers' collection, and people will wonder, how does a car like this end up with only 100 miles on it? Well, it belonged to a couple of famous people involved with cars, Bob Larrabee of the Detroit Autorama, and then Jim Wangers, who was known as the godfather of the GTO, owned this car for many, many years. Jim Wangers was the guy who was in marketing, advertising, and promotion for Pontiac, and he was the one who kind of put the GTO onto television shows back in the day, worked with Tom McCann to create the GTO shoe. He worked with Jan and Dean to write the song Little GTO. He was really a promoter extraordinaire, and still very involved with the Pontiac community. People ask what happened to the car in Joe Dirt. There is a scene where it gets sprayed with rocks, which is kind of a bummer. I guess they fixed a few chips on the car and replaced the windshield. But other than that, it survived largely unscathed. Well, even though it got beat up a little bit when it was being a movie star, it still looks great, like a brand new car, which it basically is. One of the neater ones in the brothers collection. You can see more of this car on our website at MuscleCarOfTheWeek.com, or go to our Facebook page, and you can share the car with all of your friends that are into Trans Ams or other muscle cars. And don't forget, our YouTube channel will allow you to subscribe so you never miss an episode of Muscle Car of the Week. Man, if I had one of these when I was in high school, I probably would have crashed and died.